Hey guys, you want to hear something funny? I actually recorded this reading over a week ago, and I've just been too damn lazy to edit it and then upload it. Well, I thought it was hilarious. Whatever, let's just move on to the reading then. Today I will read more of It's a Dangerous Business Going Out Your Door. Promised I would read more this time, and so I shall. Now let's see, what happened in the first chapter? Let me try and remember. Let's see, it was Cloud Ponies Day, I believe, right? They were celebrating, lots of events happening. Let's see, Twilight was trying to teach Rarity how to teleport. Let's see, wasn't working well. She went back to the library, got some lubricant, and let's see, tried to teleport back, and the treehouse exploded. Right! That's what happened. That's the important stuff anyhow, right? Right. So let us begin with Chapter 2. Rainbow Dash, being far and away the fastest of the five, got there first, and drew back in shock at what she saw. An entire side of the large tree that housed Ponyville's library had been blown out. The thick trunk curled back and charred black by the force of whatever sort of explosion had just occurred. Small bits of book paper were drifting down through the air like snowflakes, an oddly calming feature amid the signs of so much violence. Fluttershy came flapping up beside Dash, glancing up just in time for a charred piece of parchment to alight on her nose. "Oh," she said softly. "Twilight, it's going to be sad to see so many books were destroyed." "Twilight," Dash whispered. "Twilight!" She flew through the hole into the library, coughing at the paper dust and smoke. The force of the explosion seemed to have blown every book in the library off its shelf. They covered the floor, lying in heaps and piles. Spinning briefly in a circle, Rainbow Dash bent down into the pile right beneath her and began digging, hurling books and pieces of books in all directions. Fluttershy, breezing in through the hole, gasped. She was momentarily transfixed by the shock of the sight. "Come on!" Dash snapped over her shoulder at her. "Help me!" The butter-yellow Pegasus was snapped from her trance and quickly began shifting books beside her sky-blue compatriot. Meanwhile, the three landlocked ponies were running through the town square at top speed, even Pinkie Pie forgoing her usual hopping gait. A blur of yellow and bright red came streaking perpendicular to their advance before pulling alongside Applejack, who was leading the way. "Applejack, what happened? What's wrong?" Applebloom asked, panting from the exertion of keeping up with the bigger, longer-legged ponies. "There's been an accident. We think Twilight might be hurt," Applejack told her younger sister, barely sparing a glance down at her before turning her head back to the front. They were almost at the library, and sure enough, it was smoking and wounded from obvious damage. The four ponies skidded to a halt, catching their breaths in the middle of the town square. Rarity stepped forward and lifted her head. "This damage all came from magic. I can feel it. Oh dear, this is terrible." Applejack led the rest of the way through the door and into chaos of the ruined library. By now, Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy had exposed a few spots of the floor, albeit by hurling books in every direction and creating bigger piles around those spots. "I haven't found Twilight yet," Dash cried at them as they entered. She put her hoofs to her face. "Oh gosh, what if she's... Oh my gosh, 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 oh my gosh!" "Pinkie!" Applejack snapped at the pink earth pony. "Cool it, let's all just calm down and act rational like. We're gonna find Twilight." "If there's anything to find," Rainbow Dash cried. "We're never gonna find Twilight if we all start running around like headless chickens. We need to act methodical like." "If I may," Rarity stepped forward, "we'll clear the floor much better if we concentrate on moving the books to the edges, near the shelves. It would also help to stack them neatly, as opposed to tossing them on top of each other." "Okay," said Applejack, stomping her front hoof into the ground. "You heard, Rarity. Let's do this neatly, and we'll find Twilight in no time." Rarity, Pinkie Pie, Applejack, and Applebloom waded through the books and began to remove them from the middle of the room. Applejack and Applebloom worked together, handing off to each other in a miniature convoy. Pinkie Pie could take several books at a time due to her freakish skill at balancing on her back legs. Rarity cleared dozens of books in a sweep with her magic. Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash continued to sort where they were, now more neatly. Slowly, the floor began to appear. A pile of books near Pinkie Pie suddenly stirred. Every pony looked up. Rainbow Dash flew over and began tearing off books, once again not caring where they landed. Suddenly, Spike's head popped up between the tattered volumes. The little dragon burst from books around him, then rubbed his head. Ow, what happened? The ponies tried to hide their disappointment. Spike, what did you see happen? Dash demanded. Did you see what happened at Twilight Sparkle? Are you alright, Spike? Fluttershy asked, landing next to him and looking him over. That seems like a nasty bump on your head. I think I'll be fine, said Spike, though he was wincing as he touched the growing bruise. All I remember was turning around to watch Twilight teleport. Then I noticed this huge bloom of light. Something was definitely wrong. I was running down the stairs when, boom! He flung his arms apart, pantomiming the explosion he'd been caught up in. I must have been hit by a dictionary or something. Suddenly, another pile of books, this one much larger, began to shift. Distinctively feminine groaning came from beneath the jumbled volumes. Every pony rushed over to the source of the noise, their spirits rising brilliantly. Finally, to their great relief, Twilight Sparkle rose to her hooves, amid the books, trembling a little, but looking no worse for fear at first glance. The 6 other ponies rushed to her, jostling with each other to be the first to nuzzle her close. You're okay, Rainbow Dash cried, wrapping her front hooves around Twilight's neck. This is awesome. You gave us quite a scare, Sugar Cube, said Applejack. Do you feel alright? Fluttershy asked. Phillies, I'm fine, said Twilight, backing away to get some space. I'm a little shook up, but I feel okay. What happened? Pinkie Pie asked. We saw a huge explosion. I was trying to teleport back to the park, said Twilight. She began to shake out her legs one by one, making sure nothing felt wrong. Then I felt this huge surge of energy. The lubricant. Come again? Rarity asked. I came back here to get some teleportation lubricant. I wanted to get it for you, Rarity, to help you with your teleportation practice. I guess... She thought again. I unscrewed it to smell it, to see if it was still good. I guess I forgot to put the top back on all the way before I teleported. Teleportation lubricant is a powerful conductor of magical energy, especially the specific energy used for jumping through space. I guess my teleporting energy carried through into the tube. There must have been an enormous magical energy charge. Her eyes widened. Wow. In hindsight, I'm really lucky to still be in one piece. It sounds scary, said Apple Bloom. Don't worry, I'm alright, Apple Bloom. All the same, it sounds like a very near thing, Rarity pointed out. Twilight dearest, you needn't have bothered on my account. I told you, I've no use for teleporting. But I wanted to do it, Rarity. You're my friend, and I wanted to help, she smiled. But I guess I should have been more careful. She looked around the library, for the first time taking the extent of the damage. Yikes, it's going to take a lot of work to clean up this mess. Well, the important thing is that you're alright, Rarity said. We can worry about the mess after the festivities are done. Now come on, we can probably still get back in time for the... Oh my goodness! What's wrong? Twilight asked. Rarity had backed away in shock, her eyes fixed on Twilight's face. Rarity's face was severe. She glanced around the library, her eyes settling on a mirror hanging in the wall. She used her magic to pick it up and float it in front of Twilight. Well, darling, see for yourself. Twilight scrutinized her reflection. Everything looked normal. Her face wasn't cut or bruised. Her eyes weren't bloodshot. Her horn... Ah! She cried. The tip of her horn was black. Let me see that! She yelled, using her magic to take control of the mirror herself. She motioned it closer to her face. Ow! A sharp pain shot up her horn, making her wince away from the others. She cut off her magic, and the mirror dropped to the ground and shattered. Twilight, what's wrong? Apple Bloom said, looking up at her. I thought you said you were fine. I thought I was, but my horn, it hurts, Twilight said. And the tip of it is black. The little pony's eyes widened as he stared at the tip of the lavender unicorn's horn. What's wrong with your horn? Twilight tried to put on a reassuring expression, but she couldn't keep the fear from creeping over her face. I don't know. Apple Bloom turned tail and ran out the door. Apple Bloom! Applejack called after her, running to the door and yelling through the square. "Applebloom, get back here!" "She's probably just scared," said Twilight. "Well, shouldn't she be?" said Fluttershy, now sounding quite scared herself. "You have no idea what's wrong with your horn, Twilight?" Twilight Sparkle shook her head. "No, I've never seen anything like this before." She wasn't being quite honest. She had a small idea of what could be wrong with her horn, but she saw no reason to alarm any of her friends just yet, or to start panicking herself, she thought. It could just be a bruise, even though horns were hard and didn't bruise. "But I bet it's in one of these books around here. If we can just clean up the library, organize all the books, and sort out the ones about illnesses and diseases, I'm sure we can find at least one book that'll tell us what we need to know." She swung her head back around to the mess spreading before her. "Now, you've already started piling the books around the edges, but we have to go through and pick out all the medical and magical books and separate them out. Then we have to put the rest of the books together." "Ow!" She winced. She began to lift some of the books off the floor with her magic, but another sharp pain in her horn had caused her to break off the magic and drop them again. "Darling, don't strain yourself," Rarity said. "Whatever's happened to you is clearly being made worse than when you do your magic. You just sit back and take it easy. We'll handle the cleanup." "I agree with Rarity," said Applejack. "No need to make whatever's wrong with you worse." "Well," Twilight hesitated. "Okay." "Right then," said Rarity, looking about at the other ponies. "Let's organize ourselves. Applejack, you go to that section." She looked toward her left. "And Pinkie Pie, you go with her. The two of you can work together. Rainbow Dash, you and Fluttershy go straight ahead. The two of you will also work together. I'll move to the right. My magic can do the work of two ponies. Now, chop chop. Let's hurry." She clopped her hooves together. She turned back to Twilight Sparkle, a sympathetic look on her face. "Twilight, don't you worry your head about any of this. We'll clean up this mess and find out what's wrong with you in a jiffy." "Can I help you, Rarity?" Spike asked. "Well, of course you can, Spike," the white unicorn said with a smile. She trotted through the books to her assigned station. "Come over here and help me sort through the books as I levitate them. I'll bet you know this library almost as well as Twilight." Sort of," Spike said weakly. With a smile, Rarity's horn lit up, and more than a dozen books floated into the air. In truth, the white unicorn's insides were roiling in a storm of guilt. Twilight appeared to have been seriously hurt, and she'd been hurt trying to help Rarity. I told her I didn't need her help, Rarity thought, only half listening as Spike attempted to pick out the medical books from those she had levitated. "Oh, Twilight Sparkle, why did you have to be so generous? And why couldn't I have just learned to teleport the first time? This catastrophe could have been avoided." A burst of disgusted energy surged through her horn, charging the books she was levitating and sending them scattering in all directions. Spike had to dodge a few that shot his way. The other ponies glanced up towards her. Rarity gave them a smile. "Sorry, I just wasn't paying attention. Carry on." She looked away from them and returned to sorting the books, a heavy, oily feeling in the pit of her heart. "Rarity." Twilight's voice was right behind her. This time, Rarity finished setting the books down in their neat piles before turning around. "Is something wrong, darling? Are you feeling any worse?" Twilight looked sadly at her. "Rarity, it's not your fault." "Oh, Twilight, don't worry. I wasn't thinking anything of the sort," she lied. "Please, Rarity. I was the one who wasn't being careful. Don't blame yourself." "Twilight Sparkle, I said to sit tight and relax. I do not see you sitting tight, and I certainly don't see you relaxing. Go get a pillow and some root beer, if you must. You're going to strain yourself." Rarity shooed her away with her hoof. Twilight laughed, and finally retreated. Rarity allowed herself to feel a little better, then returned to her work. They had mostly cleared the library floor over the span of 20 minutes. All the medical books and magical books had been piled in the center. The other books were stacked along the edge of the floor, below the empty bookshelves. Twilight was impressed at the work they had been able to do. Under Rarity's gentle direction, her 5 friends had sorted everything on the library floor into neat order. They had even made a pile for the damaged or destroyed books, near the foot of the stairs. Twilight's heart was heavy at sight. Books being damaged always pained her, but she had more pressing things to worry about. "Great work, girls. Now we just have to start consulting these books." She walked over to the stacks in the middle. "Here. Now, here we... Suddenly, the door to the library burst open. Applebloom ran in, then stopped, then looked back over his shoulder. In here, come on! The little filly cast excited eyes on Twilight. Don't worry, Twilight, I brought help. She looked over her shoulder again. Come on, Zecora, she's in here. Zecora? Twilight echoed. As if on cue, Zecora the zebra crossed the threshold of the library. She was wearing her traveling cloak, as she usually did during her journeys into Ponyville from her home in the ever-free forest. The hood was thrown back, though, making her black and white striped neck and head clearly visible, along with the black and white mane that she cut in a high mohawk. Rings of gold surrounded her neck, and large gold earrings dangled from her ears. I have been quite patient, Zecora said in her strange rhyming speech. Now let me see the patient. Rhyming patient with patient? Jetfire, I am disappointed. She strode softly up to Twilight Sparkle and began to examine her carefully. Twilight could feel her piercing turquoise eyes staring at her, staring through her, looking deep into her. She suppressed a shiver. Though they had all learned that Zecora wasn't evil, she could still be a bit unsettling, especially at close quarters. Hey, you can't rhyme patient with patient, Rainbow Dash suddenly cried. No pony paid any attention to her. Well, Rainbow Dash and I are on the same page. Zecora's gaze at last settled on Twilight's horn, which she scrutinized at very close quarters, bringing her left eye within an inch of the blunt, blackened tip. She gently raised a hoof and tapped the tip of the horn. Twilight flinched at the shot of pain. It was like a sore, several days old. Finally, Zecora drew back. She had a sad look on her face. My guess was correct. So bemoan your lot. Twilight Sparkle, you have a bad case of horn rot. Twilight drew in a breath sharply. I was afraid of that. Rarity's eyes widened. Oh! Oh my goodness gracious, what are we going to do? Not that! Not that! She was so overcome by the shock that she briefly fell to the ground in a faint, though she was on her hooves again in a moment. She hastened to Twilight's side and nestled her on the cheek. Oh, Twilight, darling, I'm sure we can find a cure. Okay, hold up a second. What is horn rot? Applejack asked. Is that some kind of unicorn thing? Very much so. It is a disease that only unicorns are susceptible to, Twilight said. She walked over to the pile of medical and magical books in the center of the library. Now that I know what I'm looking for, I should be able to find the right book. She started to use magic, but she stopped before she caused herself any more pain. Sitting back, she used her hooves to nudge books off their stacks until she found a suitable volume. It was a thick book, bound in dark blue leather, titled Pony Problems A to Z. Placing it on the ground, she nudged it open with her left hoof and began flipping through the pages, coming to the first third of the book, then finding the H section. Several dozen pages of flipping brought her to the entry she sought. Rarity, could you please levitate this so every pony can see it? With a nod, Rarity's horn shimmered, causing the dark blue book to float into the air. The other ponies clustered around it, nudging against each other to try and get a closer view. Hey, I can't see back here, Dash cried. Some pony read it aloud, will ya? Ooh, I'll do it. Let me do it, Pinkie Pie exclaimed, raising her hoof in the air. But I wanted to do it, Applebloom said. Yeah, but I said it first. Well, I'm younger, so I should go first. Nuh-uh, oldest always goes first. Look, Pinkie, just read it, Twilight shouted. There was an edge to her voice that brooked no argument. Pinkie Pie nodded. Ahem. She cleared her throat dramatically. Then, finally, she began to read. Horn rot, also known as unicorn's blight, is an affliction that befalls unicorns, either through exposure to strange magics or through the improper application of their own magical power. It occurs specifically when the magical circuit that runs down the unicorn's spine is overwhelmed with an influx of etheric energy, of such intensity that the cells through which the circuit runs begins to burst and die. This deadening begins and is most concentrated in the unicorn's horn, which is the focus point of the magical circuit. For cures, see Potions, section 27C. Pinkie blinked a few times, then turned to Twilight. Okay, so what does that mean? It means my horn absorbed an enormous amount of magical energy, more than it could cope with, said the Lavender Unicorn. She nudged the floating book aside and turned to face all of her friends. When the teleportation lubricant was exposed to the energy of my teleporting spell, it caused those energies to be extremely amplified. When unicorns use magic, they also open their magical circuits to an influx of magic from their environment. It's part of the give and take of magic. In this case, my magical circuit absorbed all the excess energy from the overpowered teleporting spell, and it was too much for my body to handle. The cells in my horn were overwhelmed, and now they're starting to die. Die? Rainbow Dash cried. But you look fine. How can just one part of you die? It's like what happens to hooves and noses when they get frostbite, said Twilight. This last example seemed to clarify things immensely, as the whole group put on new expressions of concern. So your horn is dying? Applebloom asked. That's awful. What are you going to do about it? Not to worry, Applebloom, Twilight said, smiling to try and cheer the little filly up. There's a potion that cures horn rot without fail. The recipe should be in another one of my books, and the ingredients aren't too terribly hard to find. We just need to let it brew for 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Applejack exclaimed. It's got a lot of magic in it, Twilight said. It needs all that time to draw in enough energy, but if I just take it easy until then... Sakura shook her head. Of your endurance ability, I wouldn't boast. This horn rot is strong. You've got 2 weeks. 2.5 most. Twilight Sparkle gasped. Are you sure? What makes you say that? Sakura merely nodded. Rarity fainted again. So, what happens after 2 weeks? Fluttershy asked, almost in a whisper. She was afraid of the answer. Twilight bowed her head. Best case scenario? My horn falls off, and I won't be able to do magic anymore. Fluttershy gasped. Rainbow Dash swallowed hard. And the worst case scenario? Twilight averted her gaze. In fact, she turned her whole body, refusing to look at them. She was fighting hard to keep from showing her own fear. Fluttershy squeaked and closed her eyes tightly. No! Dash landed and stomped her hoof against the ground. I don't believe there's no faster cure. There's gotta be. There has to be. Yeah, there's gotta be something we can do, Applebloom said. Twilight can't. She just can't. The little yellow pony was on the verge of tears. Applejack sidled up to her sister and leaned into her. There is, in fact, a faster track, Sakura said. What is it? Pinkie Pie asked. The zebra didn't answer immediately. She broke away from the assembled ponies and began to wander the edges of the library, peering through the stacks of books piled beside her. She stopped at one stack and reached into it, plucking out a green book with her teeth and flinging it into the air. It skidded to a stop on the floor next to the ponies. Twilight saw that it was the same book, Supernaturals, that had the cure for the poison joke that had afflicted them in their first meeting with Sakura. If you want a fast cure, there's just one to get, she said, nudging the book open. You must eat the flower of a benevolent. The book opened onto a page dominated by the illustration of a flowering plant. It had a thin stem and long, narrow leaves. At the top of the stem was a burst of 3 flowers. Each flower had 5 broad petals arranged in a star shape. The flower petals were medium purple. The scrap of soil drawn beneath the leaves seemed to be rocky. I want to read this time, Applebloom said before any pony could object. She wiped away the tears she had started to form in her large orange eyes and nudged her way over to the book. Rarity again levitated the book into the air, so every pony could have a better view of it. The benevolent is a small flowering plant that grows in high mountain valleys of archback mountains. It belongs to the very small family of magivascular plants, or plants whose special roots allow them to absorb magical energy as well as water from the surrounding soil. The archback mountains that are the benevolent's only habitat run along what is thought to be a strong ley line, infusing the soil with enormous magical powers, which the plants absorb. This energy is collected from their 5-pointed flowers, where it mixes with the plant's chemical defenses against parasites. These 2 factors combine to make the benevolent a powerful healing plant, able to cure many illnesses, especially those of a degenerative magical nature. Applebloom finished the entry in a much higher spirits than she had begun it. She turned to Sakura. So if Twilight eats this flower, it'll cure her horn rot? A benevolent is a powerful stuff. Just 1 flower, 1 time will be enough. Hooray! Apple Bloom exclaimed, jumping for joy. Now we just gotta get it. Rainbow Dash's face grew doubtful. That might be a problem. What problem? Pinkie Pie said. It seems open and shut, just like a book. Well... The blue Pegasus began slowly. Do any of you ponies know where the Archback Mountains are? Do you? Twilight Sparkle asked. They're not far away, are they? Fluttershy asked. Dash flapped her wings and was airborne again, gliding to the door of the library. Come with me, she said with a turn towards them. They followed her back through Ponyville, through a small crowd that had gathered around the damaged library. Stares and whispers ran through the assembled ponies as the six fillies came out. Stares and whispers ran through the assembled ponies as the 6 fillies came out. The gossip intensified when the onlookers saw Zecora. Twilight Sparkle and her friends were able to pass through without much shoving, but they picked up a small entourage that followed them to the outskirts of town. They soon saw where Dash was leading them. At the north entrance of Ponyville, moored by a small raised platform, was the town balloon. It was decorated with banners and streamers, in anticipation of its participation in that night's fireworks display. For now, however, it was empty, and Rainbow Dash ushered her friends towards it. We're going up, come on. Fluttershy, could you fly up on your own with Dash? Twilight asked. That way there will be enough room for Zecora and Apple Bloom. Okay, said the butter yellow Pegasus softly. The non-flying ponies climbed into the balloon's baskets, shut the door, and started the burner. Untying the tether, they rose slowly into the air, flanked on either side by Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash. They followed Dash's lead, going as high as she was going, until they were far above Ponyville, chilled by the cold air of the high altitude. Ponyville was a brilliant patchwork of houses beneath them. To the west, they could see the rolling fields and neatly arranged apple trees of the Apple family's farm. Further west still was the dense green curtain of the everfree forest, drawn like a blanket over the surrounding terrain. The forest stretched for miles and miles until it ran against the base of a long range of mountains, spiking higher and higher into the sky as they stretched away to the north and south. Okay, Dash said, we're high enough. You'll be able to see them from here. So wait, Applejack called over to her. Are those the Archback Mountains? She pointed a hoof at the mountain range standing in front of them. Shucks, Rainbow, that'll be an easy trip. I don't know why you... No, Dash said. Those are the Draken Ridge Mountains. She pointed her hoof in front of her, angled upward. Those are the Archback Mountains. The ponies assembled in the balloon tried to follow her hoof. She was pointing slightly up, past the mountains that took up so much of their view. Twilight increased the heat of the burner, causing the balloon to go slightly higher. They rose up, and there, past the Draken Ridge Mountains, they could see them. Barely see them. They were a ragged haze far in the distance, a purple shadow at the farthest range of sight. The long line of mountains stretched away almost parallel to the Draken Ridge Mountains. Those are the Archback Mountains? Rarity exclaimed. Yup, said Rainbow Dash. That's outside the borders of Equestria, said Twilight Sparkle. Yep, said Rainbow Dash. Chapter 3. The balloon slowly returned to Earth, the 2 Pegasus ponies flanking it. No pony spoke for a few moments, each of them trying to find the best response to what they'd learned. Applejack, being quite practical and not fond of awkward silences, was first to express her feelings. Well, don't matter how far away it is, it's gotta be closer than 3 weeks' worth of waiting for a potion. I say we go get it. It's definitely not 3 weeks away, said Dash, touching down gently on her hooves. In fact, at top speed, I could probably make it there and back in 2 days. Now hold on, Rainbow, said Applejack, stepping out of the balloon and trotting down the stairs. I don't think it's a good idea for one pony to go all that way by herself. So, what? You want me to round up more Pegasuses? Dash said. I could definitely do that. She pondered. Who owes me a favor? There's Red Comet. I helped him win that hoof wrestling match with White D. I thought all of the Pegasi, Rarity emphasized the correct plural, were preparing to help with planting tomorrow. Rainbow Dash blinked a few times. Oh yeah, that's right, she said. How did you forget? That's what Plow Ponies Day always means, the start of the second round of spring planting. Applejack yelled. They can't spare more than a few Pegasi, more than a few of any pony for that matter. So what, you want me to go along with some Earth pony? Dash said. And what is so wrong with Earth ponies? Applejack growled, trotting up right into the sky blue Pegasus's face. Well, they can't fly, for starters, Rainbow Dash growled back. Sakura says Twilight's got 2 weeks, 2.5, if we push it. I don't want to push it. I want to get that benevolent as soon as possible. And if I can't do that, I have to hang back and wait for some wingless pony to climb a mountain the hard way. And what if you get there and you couldn't find any benevolets? The Earth pony retorted. You ain't the gardening type, Rainbow. You don't know the first thing about looking for flowers. They're bright purple. How hard can they be to find? And another thing, outside Equestria means outside Princess Celestia's magical protection. Applejack changed tracks. We're right at the edge of it here in Ponyville, and we still get our fair share of monsters. Out there, she motioned with her hoof to the west, who knows what kind of horrible things are out there lurking. Oh yeah, Pinkie Pie chimed in, bouncing in between the two ponies. There could be basilisks and bunyips and balrogs and even world snakes. What's a world snake? Apple Bloom asked. The pink Earth pony gave her an enormous smile. It's a snake as big as the world, silly. Are you saying I can't handle myself out there? Dash continued, pushing her snout into Applejack's. Applejack pushed right back. I'm saying that you got a bad habit of jumping hoof first into situations without knowing what you're getting into. You ought to at least take some pony with you who's more careful. Who? You? Applejack stepped back a little. She noticed all her friends were looking at her. She honestly hadn't been expecting the conversation to go this direction. Her? Leave Ponyville? Leave Equestria? That's not what she had been thinking at all. Applejack had spent her entire life in Ponyville, except for that one trip as a foal to Manhattan, but she'd never traveled more than 40 miles away from Ponyville in any direction. The thought of galloping into parts unknown was daunting. She almost couldn't wrap her mind around it. Well, maybe not me. You gotta go, Applejack, Apple Bloom said. You'll be able to find the benevolets in no time. What about spring planting? The orange pony found herself fishing for excuses. I gotta stay behind and make sure. We were gonna be expanding the South Orchard. Big Macintosh and I can do that. Or we can wait until you get back, the small yellow pony said, now hopping excitedly on her hooves. Applejack, you're the toughest and most dependable pony in Ponyville. If any pony can get to the benevolets in time, it's you. In time? Rainbow Dash repeated. Her voice held none of the mocking superiority that should have laced it. She was deadly serious. I don't think she can do it in time. I don't think any pony can do it in time without wings. We have 2 weeks, and in that time, whoever goes has to get to the Archback Mountains, find the flower, and come back. That's a week to get there, and a week to come back, assuming the benevolent is easy to find. She glared at Applejack. Think you can run that fast, Applejack? Twilight Sparkle was unsettled by this formulation. Well, when you put it that way, maybe it would be better. Actually, Spike said, I think I can help with that. Every pony turned around and glanced at the small dragon. They had quite forgotten he was there, and he'd helped them along by remaining silent when he had gone up in the balloon with them. Spike, whatever do you mean? Twilight asked. Come on, he said, motioning them with his arm and setting off back into town. Spike ran as fast as his stubby legs would carry him, which wasn't much faster than a fast trot for the ponies, but they obliged him by keeping pace in his wake. He led them back to the library, and then proceeded through the piled stacks of books and up the staircase leading to the room he shared with Twilight. Twilight followed him up the stairs. The rest of the ponies hung back, glancing at each other and wondering what Spike was up to. Spike? Twilight called, going to the top of the stairs. What are you doing? Just... His voice came from deep in the room. It sounded like a closet. Looking for... something. Aha! He suddenly vaulted out of the doorway into Twilight's room and bounded past her down the stairs. She followed him down and out into the main floor of the library. He turned around to face the ponies, grinning. I can give you all more time with this. He held up a small glass bottle with a cork stopper. An empty bottle? Fluttershy asked. Not for long, Spike said. He pulled off the topper, put the bottle to his lips, and breathed. A burst of gleaming fire shot into the bottle, the swirling flames quickly filling the small space. He pulled his mouth away and placed the lid on the bottle, pushing it down tightly. Then he held it up for them all to examine. The fire washed and bounced off the interior of the bottle with a nervous energy. It changed color depending on when and from what angle it was viewed, sometimes appearing purple, other times bright green. "This," he said, "is a special fire I use to send messages to Princess Celestia. She also uses this fire to send her messages back to me. She has a repository of it in the Palace of the Sun in Canterlot. I've breathed out this fire so that instead of going to Princess Celestia, it'll come back to me, just like the fire she has. Anything that this fire burns will be sent back through my mouth, just like the return letters from Canterlot. So when you find the benevolent, just open this bottle and make sure the fire comes out right on the flower. It'll send the flower right back here to me." "That means whoever goes won't have to rush to come back," Twilight said. "Oh, Spike." She was overcome with emotion. She nuzzled the small dragon so hard she nearly knocked him off his hooves, her violet eyes blinking back tears. Spike laughed, wrapping his arms around his friend's neck. "You're welcome." "That means y'all can spend the full 2 weeks getting to the mountains," said Apple Bloom. She turned once more to her sister. "Applejack, you can make it in 2 weeks. You gotta go now." "But Applejack noticed that not just Apple Bloom, but Twilight was now looking at her. The lavender unicorn had an eager, pleading look in her eyes. She was still struggling not to cry. But she smiled in relief as well, her face a reflection of her conviction that the Earth Pony's presence on the journey would make everything better. "If Twilight has that much faith in me... All right, I'm going." "Hooray!" Apple Bloom cried with a leap. "Thank you, Applejack," said Twilight Sparkle, smiling. Rainbow Dash narrowed her eyes. "Fine," she said in a low voice. She trotted up to Applejack and once more stuck her nose in the Earth Pony's face. "But if 13 days go by and we haven't reached the Archback Mountains at your pace, I'm going to fly the rest of the way at top speed and look for the benevolence myself." Applejack nodded. "That sounds fine to me. It's probably a good idea just to be safe." She gave the rainbow-maned Pegasus a smug look. "Assuming you're coming, of course." "What?" Rainbow Dash exclaimed, drawing back. "Of course I'm coming. I have to come." "I haven't heard you officially volunteer." "Well, I'm officially volunteering right now," she cried, hovering off the ground. "I'm going to the Archback Mountains with you." "Okay." Applejack looked back at the assembled ponies and Spike. "Zecora, would you be willing to keep an eye on Twilight while we're gone?" "At my home in the forest I must stay," said the zebra. "But I'll be sure to stop by at least once a day." "Good enough," said Applejack. "With Spike here too, I reckon 2 more of us ought to stay behind and help look after Twilight. That'll leave 3 of us to go." "Applejack," Twilight protested. "I don't need that many ponies playing nursemaid." "Oh, Twilight," said Fluttershy. "With something this serious, you're bound to get worse. You shouldn't be afraid to take help. The Hornwort will worsen and strike you down. In 2 weeks' times, you'll do far more than frown," Zecora added. "Fluttershy, would you be willing to stay? I don't mean to say it wouldn't be a help on the road, but you're so good at taking care of critters." "I understand, Applejack," said the butter-yellow Pegasus. I'll gladly help take care of Twilight." "So we need 1 more pony for the trip," Applejack said. She considered the remaining 2 choices. She sighed. "Well, I guess you can come, Pinkie Pie." "Oh boy!" the pink Earth Pony cried, bouncing on her legs like they were springs. "A real honest-to-real adventure! A perilous journey across dangerous lands with unknown terrors! A bold step beyond the familiar and into the extraordinary!" She cocked her head. "I guess I wouldn't mind going." "Actually," Rarity said, "I'd like to go, if you don't mind, Pinkie Pie." The rest of the group stared agog at the white unicorn. "Why do you want to go?" Dash asked. "It's not some shopping trip." "It's going to be dangerous, Rarity," said Applejack. "Well, I know that," Rarity said, not looking entirely pleased with what she was saying. "But I feel I must go. Twilight is in danger. Twilight is in the danger she's in now because she was trying to help me. I feel like I need to make it right." "Oh, Rarity, I said it wasn't your fault," Twilight told her. "But it is, at least indirectly. I have a debt I must repay, darling, and I won't be dissuaded. Besides, she added with a smile, no pony in Ponyville has my eye for color. I'll pick out those beautiful flowers with no trouble at all. Pinky nodded. Okay, Rarity, you can go. I'll stay here and keep the home fires burning. Now that I think on it, Applejack said, it might not be a bad idea to have you along, Rarity. Your talents could be useful, not to mention your magic. Just so long you don't slow us down, Dash said. I assure you, Rainbow, I'm more than capable of keeping up with you lot, Rarity answered. Okay then, it's settled. Applejack stomped her hoof on the floor. Rarity, Rainbow Dash, and I will go to those Archback Mountains and get that benevolent. In less than 2 weeks. Twilight Sparkle smiled. Her heart was in her throat. Today had been such a roller coaster. Peaceful, then violent, then tragic, and now, from her despair, a flame of hope has been kindled. She was still frightened, of course. She wasn't used to placing a problem to somebody else's hooves to solve. It was always she who tried to solve the problems of others with her magic, with her intelligence, with the knowledge she acquired through study. Now, she had to trust others to help her, and if they failed, she could pay the ultimate price. They won't fail, she told herself. They're my friends, and they've never let me down before. Thank you all so much, she said. She looked over her friends' heads to the hole in the library's trunk, and the sunlight streaming through it. All the rest of Ponyville was out there, relaxing and having fun. She envied them. But, I was wondering, do you think we could go back to the festival? I really want to see it. Applejack nuzzled her. Sure thing, Sugar Cube. I can do my packing tonight. Let's go enjoy the sun while she's still up. The orange Earth Pony led the way to the library's door, the lavender unicorn by her side, and all their friends followed them into the afternoon light. So there are 2 chapters of It's a Dangerous Business Going Out Your Door. I've kind of been wondering, so I will ask you this. What do you prefer? Do you prefer like having each chapter having their own little video? Or do you like a few chapters to be lumped together into one? I'm thinking of actually splitting this up into 2 videos and releasing them like one day at a time. But I may not. So yes, tell me what you all like. And I'll do whichever answer gets the most comments, I guess. If you enjoyed my reading of It's a Dangerous Business Going Out Your Door, be sure to comment and rate and subscribe.